شهریان افغانستان، یگانه شبکه تلویزیونی ملی افغانها در خارج از کشور.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Today is, after full days, will be the 17th anniversary of the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan. For this reason, in the first topic, in the Caravan of Truth show, we will be talking to the American people. The fact that the present U.S. occupation of Afghanistan is 100 times more brutal and immoral than the former Soviet Union invasion of Afghanistan. In the second subject, we will explain that it will be in the best interest of the Afghanistan neighboring countries, including China, Russia, Iran, Pakistan, and others, to support the Afghan resistance who are fighting to make a stable, independent, terrorism-free, opium-free, and mafia-free Afghanistan. Now, in the first subject, for clarification, the mineral-rich Afghanistan was occupied by two global superpowers just in the past 35 years. Therefore, in the past 35 years, Afghanistan has two dark days. The first dark day is in Afghanistan history was December 25, 1979, in which the Soviet Red Army invaded Afghanistan. The Soviet occupation failed after almost 10 years Soviet-Afghan war. The last Soviet soldier left Afghanistan on February 15, 1989. As a result, Afghanistan was fully liberated from the Russian invasion after the complete withdrawal of the Russian troops in 1989. The second dark day in Afghanistan history is November 7, 2001, in which both the US-UK imperialist twin invaded the mineral-rich Afghanistan 17 years ago. After 4 days will be the anniversary of the American occupation of Afghanistan. As a result of the ongoing 17-year Afghan-American war, the present U.S. occupation is also on the verge of defeat. And today, almost 70% Afghanistan is liberated from the present U.S. occupation supported by the Western colonialism. Therefore, both December 25, 1979 and November 7 of 2001 are the same darkest day in Afghanistan history in the past 35 years. Now we clarify to the American people the similarities and the differences of these two invasions in Afghanistan. Briefly, the present American invasion in 2001 and the former Soviet invasion in 1979 of the mineral-rich Afghanistan has 3 similarities and 20 differences. In reality, both the present American and the former Soviet invasion were similar in terms of geopolitical objectives, slogans, and the installation of the puppet regimes in Kabul. For instance, after the Soviet invasion in 1979, the Russian toppled Hafizullah Amin regime, and the Kremlin had replaced it by Babur Karmal puppet regime in Afghanistan. Similarly, the United States government invaded Afghanistan on October 7, 2001, toppled the Taliban government, and the White House had replaced it by Hamid Karzai puppet regime of Northern Alliance minority warlords in Afghanistan. In addition, both invasion were similar in terms of political slogans. For instance, to justify the invasion of Afghanistan in 1979, Moscow had claimed that it wanted to help the new Karmal government to defeat extremism, terrorism, the American imperialism, and other reactionary forces in the region, and help Afghanistan people to establish a democratic and progressive government in the country. Similarly, to justify the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, the White House had claimed after 9/11 that Afghanistan people are harboring Osama bin Laden, terrorism, extremism, and Al-Qaeda. The main reason for the U.S. invasion is to either capture or kill Osama and dismantle terrorism and Al-Qaeda bases in Afghanistan. But contrary to the White House false political claim, Osama bin Laden was brought by the U.S. government and its spy agency, CIA, from Sudan to Afghanistan in 1996. Osama bin Laden even did not have any passport and nationality while living in Sudan. It was the U.S. spy agency, CIA, which provided passport and visa for Osama bin Laden and expelled him from Sudan to Afghanistan. In other words, it was the U.S. government which brought the U.S. enemy Osama bin Laden to Afghanistan for future pretext to justify the occupation of the mineral-rich Afghanistan. As we have mentioned this in this program before, couple times. Furthermore, the third similarity between the two invasions were the achievement of the specific political goal in Afghanistan. For example, the Soviet invaded the mineral-rich Afghanistan in 1979 for three geopolitical objectives. One, to incorporate Afghanistan into the former USSR, just like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and other 14 countries had already been. And second, to occupy Afghanistan's mineral and natural resources. And three, to extend the Soviet Union border to the south to reach the Indian Ocean and the oil-rich Arab countries. Similarly, the U.S. invaded Afghanistan in 2001 for three specific objectives. One, to occupy Afghanistan mineral, which is estimated to worth trillions of US dollars. Two, to secure the trans-Afghanistan oil and gas pipeline from Central Asia, Turkmenistan, and Caspian to the Indian Ocean. Three, to occupy the country for making permanent military and intelligence bases to surrender the neighboring countries of China, Iran, Pakistan, and others in the region. So based on the foregoing, both the former Soviet invasion and the present American invasion were similar in terms of geopolitical objectives of the invasion, false political slogans as pretext for the invasion of Afghanistan, and the installation of the puppet regimes of Hamid Karzai or Babra Karmal in Afghanistan. Now we explain the differences of the former Soviet Union occupation and the present American occupation of Afghanistan. And we will find out that the present American invasion is 100 times, almost 100 times more brutal and more immoral than the former Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. Briefly, there are fundamental differences between the two invasions in Afghanistan in terms of corruption, opium production, mafia activities, creation and funding terrorism, number of troops, the lethal weapons using in the war against Afghanistan people, military expenses, the treatment of the Kabul puppet regimes, treatment of Afghan detainees, women's rights, respect to Islam and Afghanistan culture, and the destructive consequences of the two invasions on Afghanistan people. But here we briefly clarify only 20 differences between the Soviet and the US invasion in Afghanistan. Now let us hear an Arabic song, and after that we will continue. Muhammad Abdu.
بعد كنتوا ولا قريبين لمراد انتم دايم سالمين. بعد كنتوا ولا قريبين لمراد انتم دايم سالمين. ما اقول غير الله يكون بعون كل العاشقين. يا بعد كنتم ولا قريبين مراد انتم دايم سالمين. بعد كنتم ولا قريبين مراد انتم دايم سالمين. ما اقول غير الله يكون بعون كل العاشقين. بعد أشتاق أسأل عنكم الأشواق. الفراق ما غير علي الفراق.
Okay, sorry, this is almost 10 minutes, this song, really long. We do not have that much time, so it is enough. Briefly, we talk about the similarity, 3 similarities. Now we are talking about the differences. The differences are almost over 100, but we do not have that much time to cover all the 100 differences, but briefly this 20 is enough. Briefly, the 20 clear differences between the former Soviet invasion and the present US occupation in Afghanistan are as follows. The first difference is that during the Soviet invasion. The Russian imposed Babra Karmal regime in Kabul was made of well-known and educated Khalq and Parcham politicians who had regular and normal background. On the contrary, during the present U.S. occupation, the American imposed Kabul regime is made of notorious Northern Alliance warlords, rapists, separatists, and foreign Afghan spies and welfare recipients, refugees who have corrupt and human rights abusive background. The second difference is that during the Soviet invasion, the Russian imposed Babra Karmal regime was very transparent, and corruption was not an issue during the Russian invasion in Afghanistan. On the contrary, during the present U.S. occupation, the American instilled regime in Kabul is the most corrupt on the surface of the earth. And corruption is one of the biggest problem in Afghanistan. The main reason for the despicable corruption in Afghanistan is the fact that Kabul regime was made from day one by American corruption and bribery dollars. In fact, the U.S. itself is one of the most corrupt government which use both war and corruption and bribery to achieve their imperialist goals in the world and abuse the American taxpayer money. For clarification, even multiple American media reported that for more than a decade, millions of American dollars packed into suitcases, backpacks, and plastic shopping bags have been dropped off by the CIA every month at the office of the hashish man Hamid Karzai. The CIA was giving tens of millions cash dollar in bribery to Hamid Karzai regime every month. The reason for the bribery and corruption was that the CIA and the American government was trying to buy influence of the warlords and corrupt politicians in Kabul regime to help with the U.S. occupation, to help with the U.S. in the occupation of the mineral-rich Afghanistan. Therefore, the main reason and source for the ongoing despicable corruption in Afghanistan is the CIA and the U.S. government, which were giving tens of millions cash dollars for years and years to warlords, murderers, rapists, and foreign Afghan refugees and corrupt politicians to help in the occupation of Afghanistan. The third difference is that during the Soviet invasion, the number of KGB spies in the Russian imposed Babra Karmal regime were only 17. Only 17. In the name of these 17, KGB spies were all high-level Afghan officials in the Babra Karmal regime, and it is clearly written in a book which is written by one KGB spy. The name of the book is The World Was Going Our Way. In those 17 Afghan KGB spies in the Karmal regime were all the big level. I cannot remember all of them, but I read the book. I knew the names. And Babra Karmal was the name of Babra Karmal, and there was Babra Karmal. There was Rafi Keshtman. Yeah, who is this? This American spy? He is disturbing me? Okay. This was no. What do they call that? That she was, Babra Karmal, Keshtman, Najib, and Rafi, and Taraki. These were the names. You can see their names by yourself. Okay. In this knocking, this is KGB, the USA spy agency. They are disturbing me all the time. Now they are knocking this door that low a little bit, talk lowly. And these are all. This is the democracy. There is no freedom of speech in this country. They will never let you to tell the truth to people. They do due to crime in Afghanistan, we do not have even the right to tell to the people, and they practically do the crime. So on the contrary, during the present U.S. invasion, the number of CIA, FBI, and other Western Afghan refugee spies in the Kabul regime are more than 17,000 people. More than 17,000 people. For instance, almost all the high-level foreign Afghan refugees in the present Kabul regime are foreign spies, including the presidents, ministers, ambassadors, senators, parliament, governors, parliamentarians, governors, military, police, and spy officers. All this spy work for the interest of the foreign invaders. This is the reason that Afghanistan people are going to destruction, because they are working for the imperialism, not for Afghanistan people. They are hired by the American taxpayer money. 90% salary of the Afghanistan regime employees are paid by America, and they work for the American people, for the U.S. and NATO interest, not for Afghanistan people. This is the reason now Afghanistan is a garbage. The fourth difference is that during the former Soviet invasion, women's rights were well respected and well preserved in Afghanistan. On the contrary, during the present U.S. invasion, women's rights are in extreme danger in Afghanistan. Almost over 2 million women are drug-addicted patients today in Afghanistan. Over 2 million women. Furthermore, based on credible survey, the three worst governments in the world are India, Afghanistan, and the United States of America, in which women are in danger. So for this reason, America, America, the Western imperialism, they are based on falsehood, on propaganda. America, Afghanistan, and India are the three worst governments in terms of women's rights abuses. And women are in the United States were not safe in White House. But they are claiming that they take care of Afghanistan women because women are abused in Afghanistan. 5, during the Soviet invasion, and you see Farhanda, 27 years, in 2017, she was burned to death in front of ARC in the presence of the Kabul regime police. This is the women's rights in Afghanistan. We did not have any such women's rights abuses in Afghanistan like now. And over 2 million, like I said, they are drug-addicted patients. Okay, 5, during the Soviet invasion, all Afghan detainees and prisoners were under the authority of the Kabul regime. There is no evidence that any Afghan detainee or prisoner was tortured or killed by Russian military in Afghanistan. On the contrary, during the present American invasion, the U.S. military and spy agency had the authority to detain, torture, and kill Afghanistan people. In fact, tens of thousands of Afghan detainees were tortured and killed by the U.S. Army and spy agency in Afghanistan. In the last 17 years, the Karzai puppet regime was just helping the U.S. Army to detain Afghanistan people based on credible evidence. One day, President Hamid Karzai himself handed over a 13-year-old Afghan boy to American Army, and the U.S. Army sent the 19-year-old boy to Guantanamo. Somebody say to me that during thousands were killed in Afghanistan. He said that one day we brought 3 people in Kandahar to the facility of the American facility, and he said that he left after 2 hours when he came, and he asked that we are the 3 people. And the American said that his body is in the back, under the beds. You can see it. Yeah. After 2-3 hours, they were killed. The sixth difference is that during the Soviet invasion, there is no evidence that the Russian army had used dogs and animals for killing Afghanistan people. On the contrary, during the present American occupation, the Pentagon had used dogs for killing Afghanistan people. For instance, in Khuz province, an entire Afghan family was beaten and killed by U.S. Army dogs. And I think that person, he was working for the United Nations. He was from Hizb Islami, and he was a pharmacist. I heard that. I knew that person. He was studying in Kabul University in our time. The seventh difference is that during the Russian invasion, the Soviet army was very respectful to Islam and Afghanistan culture. In the entire Soviet 10-year occupation, only one case was reported in which a Russian soldier sexually abused a girl, but the Russian soldier was killed instantly by his general. And this is a true story. The only one story reported that was in north of Kabul, I think in Parwan or Panjshir, somewhere like that. And there was Russian, they were war, fighting with the Mujahideen. And when Russian soldiers sexually assaulted that girl, and there were one Khalk and one Parcham people too with them. And then when they returned from the war, from the fight, and then the Khalki told to the Russian general that one Russian did this crime. And then the Russian general asked him whether he knows the soldier or not. He said, yes, I know. Then the general told him, who is that? Then he said that this was the Russian soldier that he did. He committed the crime. And then the general told him that, did you do this? He said, yes, I did. And he was thinking that this is war or mountains, or I could do whatever I want. Then the general told him that walk that way. He walked that way and he took his pistol and he shot him and he killed him instantly. And that was the discipline of the Russian Red Army. On the contrary, during the present U.S. invasion, the U.S. troops are very disrespectful to the Holy Quran, Islam, and Afghanistan culture. For instance, we knew that they were burning the Holy Quran, dismembering dead bodies, and insulting martyrs and women. For instance, just in one case, in March 2012, around 18 U.S. soldiers left their base and entered 3 houses in Panjwai district in Kandahar. The American soldiers had killed 16 innocent civilians, including 9 children, and insulting women in their homes. All these American felon soldiers were forgiven, except one soldier was symbolically persecuted, and he got a light sentence. I think he might be released now, I do not know, but just one out of around 18. And this happened numerous in hundreds. The 18th difference is, the 8th difference is that during the Soviet invasion, the Kremlin used to treat the Babur regime friendly as a comrade. The Russian army was hearing the recommendations, suggestions, and comments of Babur regime. But during the present American invasion, the U.S. treats the Kabul puppet regime like a slave. And when a simple American soldier is more powerful than the president or the defense minister of Afghanistan. For instance, one day, the defense minister of Karzai wanted to enter the Bagram military base in Kabul, but he was not allowed by the gate security, who was a foreign soldiers, to enter the Bagram base in Kabul. Yeah, he was, I think, NATO soldier, but he was from Belgium. Forget about it. One Belgium NATO soldier is more powerful in Afghanistan from the Karzai, was more powerful from Karzai defense minister. And the defense minister just returned back. Another time, Hamid Karzai was weeping on TV and complaining that he is not being heard by his foreign masters. And he was weeping. The entire Afghanistan was seeing him. And Karmal did not weep. on the TV to Afghanistan people that Russian did not hear me. The ninth difference is that during the Russian invasion in 1980s, both the Russian army and the Karmal regime war against opium production and smuggling in Afghanistan. In fact, opium and heroin production, smuggling, selling, and addiction was not an issue in Afghanistan during the 10-year Soviet invasion of the country. On the contrary, during the present U.S. occupation, both the Western occupiers and the American imposed Kabul regime are complicit in opium production and smuggling in the past 17 years until the present day. In fact, opium cultivation was prohibited before the U.S. invasion in Afghanistan. But as soon as the U.S. occupied Afghanistan in 2001, opium cultivation became legal, and the U.S. and U.K. Army were encouraging Afghanistan farmers to grow opium on their land instead of corn and rice because they are more expensive. So this is the reason that today Afghanistan produces over 90% of the world opium and heroin. Based on credible survey, 80% heroin in Europe and 60% heroin of the United States are being smuggled from Afghanistan. Today, Afghanistan produces around 20,000 tons of opium. Who smuggled this 20,000 opium from Afghanistan to the neighboring countries, America or Europe? This nobody can do except the U.S. NATO. The warplane, they smuggle to America and to the Europe everywhere, and they are making over 100,000 money from this smuggling. So now let us hear one Iranian song, and then we will continue. Iranian song.
کمر باریک من شام تاریک من بیا به نزدیک من صلح و صفا کن جفا دیگر بسه با ما وفا کن کمر باری با ما صفا کن کمر باری کمر باریک من شام تاریک من بیا به نزدیک من صلح و صفا کن جفا دیگر بسه با ما وفا کن کمر باری با ما صفا کن کمر باری الهی ما ندین دلخانه تو بلبل باشی و دلانه تو کمر باری کتاب کودکان گردد به مکتب پر از حرف من و افسانه تو کمر باری که من شام تاریک من بیا به نزدیک من صلح و صفا کن جفا دیگر بسه با ما وفا کن کمر باری با ما صفا کن کمر باری تو شاخ پرگلی من برگ زردم تو شور خنده ای من آه سردم کمر باری تو خورشیدی و من سیاره تو مرا بگذار و تا دورت بگردم کمر باری که من شام تاریک من بیا به نزدیک من صلح و صفا کن جفا دیگر بسه با ما وفا کن کمر باری با ما صفا کن کمر باری کسی که عاشق است کسی که عاشق است از جان نترسد که عشق از کنده و زندان نترسد کمر باری دل عاشق مثال دل عاشق مثال گرگ پشت است که گرگ از هی چوپان نترسد کمر باری که من شام تاریک من بیا به نزدیک من صلح و صفا کن جفا دیگر بسه با ما وفا کن کمر باری با ما صفا کن کمر باری
Yeah, we are talking about the difference between the 20 difference between the U.S. occupation and the former Soviet Union occupation in Afghanistan. And we said 9, the 10th difference is that during the former Soviet Union invasion, the Russians did not falsify and change Afghanistan history, demography, culture, and did not make false hero in Afghanistan. But during the present American occupation, the U.S. falsified the Afghanistan history, demography, culture, language, and made false hero in Afghanistan history. For example, Afghanistan is full of national hero, but for instance, Ahmad Shah Massoud was one of the Northern Alliance separatist warlords who had killed and abused numerous innocent Hazara Afghan in Abshar, north of Kabul, in the early 1980s. And you can see the video here in the YouTube. In addition, Massoud was a treasonous and member of and was collaborating with 3 foreign spy agencies, including CIA, KGB, and ISI. Despite this fact, the U.S. government was trying to make Massoud a national, and he was dividing Afghanistan. He was trying in 1990s to divide Afghanistan, but he was repeatedly defeated by the Taliban, and he did not succeed in his plan. So despite all these facts, the U.S. government is trying to make Massoud a national hero. Afghanistan history will never accept false hero and fiction. Furthermore, the CIA falsified the demography of Afghanistan and increased the minority percentage in the CIA Facebook. The CIA fake Facebook our Tajik brothers by history. They are 14%, from 12 to 14% in Afghanistan. And they are majority in only 3 provinces, Parwan, Takhar, and Badakhshan. They are not majority in any other provinces in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has 34 provinces. Panjshir is not a province. That is a district. So now they reach from 12 to 30. This because the sideline, the Pashtun, major ethnicity who make 65% of Afghanistan population, the sideline that. In addition to that, they increase in their Facebook falsely the CIA, the minority percentage in Afghanistan population. Population, yes. So the 11th difference is that during the Soviet occupation, both the Russian government and Babur Karmal regime did not make a penny from illicit drug smuggling in Afghanistan. And also, opium and heroin addiction was not an issue during the Soviet 10-year invasion. On the contrary, during the present American occupation, both the foreign invaders and the Kabul mafia regime make over 100 billion US annually from illicit opium and heroin production and smuggling in Afghanistan. And furthermore, today Opium and heroin addiction is the biggest problem in Afghanistan during the 17-year U.S. occupation. On the ground, today Afghanistan has almost 4.5 million narcotic-addicted patients, including 1.2 million children. The 12 difference is that during the Soviet invasion, there was no evidence that the Soviet Red Army or the pro-Soviet Karmel regime were involved in the creation of terrorism in Afghanistan to destabilize the neighboring countries. On the contrary, during the present U.S. occupation, both the foreign military and the Kabul regime are obviously complicit and involved in creating, funding, and arming ISIS terrorism in Afghanistan in order to destabilize China, Russia, Iran, and Pakistan, which are the main rival of the West in the region. For clarification, more than 1,000 people in Afghanistan have witnessed that military helicopters are supplying weapons and ammunition to ISIS terrorists in Afghanistan. In fact, Afghanistan's space and border are under the U.S. control in the last 17 years. Therefore, there is no doubt that these military helicopters belong to the U.S. NATO occupiers, which supply weapons and support ISIS terrorists in Afghanistan. These helicopters do not come from space or from other stars. They are here in Afghanistan. Furthermore, based on credible evidence, the ISIS leader used to visit regularly the headquarters of the U.S. puppet regime spy agency in Kabul. Many people saw by their own eyes that the leader of ISIS used to come and visit the spy agency of the Kabul regime. Therefore, terrorism in ISIS in Afghanistan is the U.S. NATO or the U.S. West project. And even the India, they are sending mercenary from India to Afghanistan by passport. You see, when the President Trump bombed the mother of bomb in Afghanistan, 17 only Indian mercenaries were killed in Jalalabad, in that area where the drop the bomb. And I think fewer from Bangladesh. How these people come from India to Afghanistan and then to Achin, to Jalalabad, and to be an ISIS members. They are sent by the Indian government to Kabul by passport, and the Kabul regime provide transportation, and they send them to Achin and Jalalabad to be for the terrorist activities. And this, the Indian government must acknowledge that. Okay, the 13 difference. Therefore, terror project. The 13 difference is that during the 10-year Soviet invasion, there were around 100,000 Soviet troops at any time who were fighting for the occupation of Afghanistan. 100,000, 100 to 106,000. On the contrary, during the present American occupation, there were around 300,000 U.S. NATO soldiers and military contractors in its peak who were fighting for the liberation of Afghanistan. In another word, the number of the U.S. NATO troops and military contractors in its peak were 300% more than the Soviet troops in Afghanistan. The 14th difference is that during the Soviet occupation, the Red Army had been using conventional weapons in war against the Afghanistan people. On the contrary, during the present U.S. occupation, the Pentagon has been using all kinds of lethal weapons and internationally prohibited weapons, including nuclear bombs, carpet bombs, and CBU-87 cluster bombs. For instance, the U.S. had dropped 3 atom bombs on Turabura area in Afghanistan during the invasion in 2001. And this is a fact. They use atom and nuclear bombs both in Iraq and Afghanistan. The CBU cluster bomb are such dangerous weapon that each one of these bombs split into 60,600 bomblet or smaller bomb after the explosion. And based on survey, the U.S. dropped 600 CBU 87 cluster bomb in Afghanistan. If you multiply 60,600 by 60,000 bomb, almost over 36 million bomblet the United States dropped in Afghanistan. Just one CBU-87 kind. The 15 difference is that the military expenses of the U.S. The Soviet Union war in Afghanistan were $4 billion in a year. $4 billion. On the contrary, the military expenses of one American soldier in Afghanistan is around $1 million per year, based on credible sources. The 17-year Afghan-American war, including the lifetime medical care of tens of thousands permanently disabled U.S. soldiers, cost around $4.8 trillion for the American taxpayer money. The 16th difference is, in other words, the United States, like during the peak, there were 100 U.S. soldiers and 100 contractors, almost 200,000 soldiers and military contractors, and they were spending $200 billion per year in Afghanistan. But Russian were spending only $4 billion in a year. America was spending $200 billion in a year during the peak. And now they are spending $48 billion in a year. 16th, after the 16th difference says that after the 10th year Soviet occupation, the Russian withdraw from Afghanistan, but left a functional Dr. Najib government in Kabul, which was able to rule all the major cities competently without the support of the Red Army. On the contrary, after the 17-year U.S. occupation, the U.S. NATO failed to make a competent government in Kabul. In the present time, almost 70% Afghanistan is liberated from the U.S. NATO occupation. The U.S. imposed warlord regime is in life support and will collapse as soon as the U.S. NATO withdraw from Afghanistan, regardless of the time. The 17th difference is that during the Soviet invasion, the name of the Afghan legitimate resistance was Mujahideen, who were fighting again for the liberation of Afghanistan in 1980s. But during the present U.S. invasion, the name of the legitimate Afghan resistance is the Taliban, who are fighting for the liberation of the country. Here, one fact must be clarified, that all the Afghan extremist party of Afghanistan, like Hizb Islami, Jamiyat-e-Islami, Ittihad-e-Islami, they were, during the Russian invasion, they were fighting for the liberation of Afghanistan. But now, on the contrary, they support the occupation of the United States of Afghanistan. Therefore, it is clear proof that all the extremist religious parties, both in Afghanistan and in the Islamic world, are hypocrite, are munafiqeen, and they are the project of the West and serve the interest of the American imperialism. And one fact, this extremist party, this Hizb Islami, for example, in Afghanistan, Jamiyat-e-Islami, Ittihad, before they were one party, and then they split for some political interest. They were before one party, and it was written, and it is written now when you search, the Western spy agency said that they created this extremism in the Muslim world to prevent the progress of communism at that time. The communism was in a very advanced everywhere after the Russian Revolution, China Revolution, Cuba Revolution. In the Eastern Russia, there were many people in Vietnam. So they were afraid, and they say, just we created this extremism, extremist Muslim parties to prevent the progress of communism in the Islamic countries. So this is the reason. This served the interests of the American. During the Russian, they were fighting for the eastern of the West, and now they fight for the occupation of Afghanistan. They are trying. They are with the United States. All are member of the puppet government now. So they are munafiqin, and God condemned munafiqin in Quran. Munafiqin means Prophet Muhammad said that I am not afraid of infidels, but I am afraid of munafiqin, because munafiqin is more dangerous to Islam than the infidels. The infidels, like this big beard. Yesterday they were fighting, these extremists, they were fighting against the Russian, and now they justify the occupation of the American. So anyway, we do not have that much time. The 18th difference is that during the Soviet invasion, majority of the Islamic and Arab countries, the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and the United Nations were supporting the liberation of Afghanistan against the Russian. But now, during the American invasion, all of them support the occupation of Afghanistan and call the legitimate resistance of Afghanistan insurgents, which is a clear and 100% hypocrisy. The 19 difference is that during the Soviet invasion, Pakistan was supporting the liberation of Afghanistan in 1980s, but India was supporting the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1980s. Similarly, during the present U.S. occupation, again, Pakistan people support the liberation of Afghanistan, but India support the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan. The reason for that is the fact that Pakistan people are not only Muslim, but the second major ethnicity in Pakistan are Pashtun, Pathan, or Afghan. All Pashtun or Pathan or Afghan are historically from Afghanistan, and all are historically Afghan, and they belong to Afghanistan people, to Afghanistan country. This is the reason that Pakistan people support the liberation of Afghanistan anytime and all the time. And this is the reason that Pakistan hosted more Afghan refugees than any other countries in the world. And the blind imperialism, I do not know what is their logic. 28 countries, all the colonial English ring, from Canada, United States, USA, New Zealand, and Australia, they came to Afghanistan with guns. All the Western colonial Europe, they came with guns to Afghanistan and killing Afghanistan people to occupy the mineral-rich Afghanistan. And the Pashtun, the Afghan, they do not have the right just to support their own brothers in Afghanistan who are Muslim, who are their blood, with blood. They have one blood in their brothers. So not only Pashtun in Pakistan, but all Pathan in India, throughout the world, have the right to support the liberation of Afghanistan against the Western colonialism. So, this is the reason that in the 20th, in the last difference between the former Soviet invasion and the present American invasion is based on the destructive consequences of the two invasions on Afghanistan people. It is clear from the above mentioned fact that the present American invasion is almost 100 times more destructive and more immoral than the former Soviet invasion in terms of opium production and smuggling, drug addiction, ISIS terrorism, corruption, immorality, women's rights, safety and security. What means that the Afghanistan people could not compensate the consequences of the U.S. invasion in the next 100 centuries. Sorry, I wanted to show you one very horrific video when the American and NATO are bombing Afghanistan, civilians, children, like many people are being killed, children, and the picture was not good. So this is the reason I omit that from this program. Now let us hear one Afghan Pashto song, Gulpana, and then we talk about the second subject. Gulpana. Sorry, we have not enough time for this song, and now we talk about the second subject. And now we explain that it will be in the best interest of Afghanistan neighboring countries, including China, Russia, Iran, and Pakistan, to support the Afghan resistance who are fighting to make a stable, independent, ISIS-free, opium-free, and mafia-free Afghanistan. For clarification, the three biggest problems in Afghanistan is the war, terrorism, and opium production and smuggling. In fact, the root cause of all these three biggest problems in Afghanistan are the Western imperialism and occupiers. For instance, it is the U.S. invasion which imposed the war of liberation on Afghanistan people. Just like the Soviet-Afghan war, the present Afghan-American war for the liberation of Afghanistan will continue as long as the U.S. NATO troops are present in Afghanistan. It is the U.S. which has turned Afghanistan to one of the most dangerous countries in the world. Today in Afghanistan, around 60 police and soldiers are being killed every day. When the number of security forces has reached to 20 people per day in 2016, then the U.S. ordered the Kabul slavish regime to keep secret the war casualties in Afghanistan. What means that the U.S. NATO lost control in Afghanistan, the security situation is deteriorating exponentially in the present time. Almost 57 police and soldiers lose their lives every day in Afghanistan in the present time. 57 police and soldiers only, not the wounded and not the civilian. The point is that it is impossible for the U.S. NATO to defeat the Afghan resistance and stabilize the country. Therefore, the continued violence and bloodshed directly threat the safety, stability, and security of Afghanistan neighboring countries. In addition to war, the exponential increase of opium production by the West does not only harm Afghanistan, which has near 5 million drug-addicted patients, but also being smuggled to Afghanistan neighboring countries. As a historic fact of the opium war, the Western imperialism does not only smuggling opium and heroin to make money, but also the West has been using narcotic against their rival and enemy as lethal weapons to make millions of people addicted. Therefore, the smuggling of tons and tons opium from Afghanistan to Russia, Iran, China, Pakistan, and others directly affect millions of people in the neighboring countries. Furthermore, the West created ISIS terrorism in Afghanistan basically for two reasons. One, to destabilize Russia, China, Iran, and Pakistan, which are the main rivals of the West. Two, for propaganda, to prolong war in Afghanistan for occupation of the mineral-rich country. Therefore, as long as the U.S. occupation exists, the war, ISIS, and opium production will continue in Afghanistan, which not only harm Afghanistan people, but also detrimental to all Afghan neighboring countries. For the foregoing, it will be in the best interest of Russia, China, Pakistan, Iran, and other Afghanistan neighboring countries to support the Afghanistan people and Afghan resistance and the liberation of Afghanistan from the ongoing U.S. NATO invasion, to make a peaceful, opium-free, ISIS-free, mafia-free, and warlord-free Afghanistan. Unfortunately, and the only big government in the region which support the U.S. occupation is the Narendra Modi government of India. It should be mentioned that the Modi government should not forget the Western bloody history in India. What means that it was the English colonialism which had occupied India for more than 100 years, abusing and exploiting the decent Indian people for more than a century. It was the English colonialism which imposed the cultivation of opium in British India and was smuggling to China at the expense of Indian and Chinese people. It was the English East India imperialist company which had been exploiting Indian people for centuries. In addition, the Modi government of India should not forget the teaching of the great philosopher of India, Mahatma Gandhi, who had been fighting for the liberation of India against the Anglo-colonialism for decades. Therefore, Prime Minister Narendra Modi should have a common sense and must not be a submissive lackey of the American imperialism to support the U.S. occupation of Afghanistan or collaborate with the occupiers and the Kabul slavish mafia regime. Furthermore, it would be logic for the Modi government to stop jealousy and bluffing, but support the anti-corruption revolution and true democracy in Pakistan, which is intended to fight hunger and poverty for millions of people in Pakistan. In fact, after 20 years, tireless struggle, the Pakistan people have succeeded to make a true democracy and finally defeated the decade-long corruption and the rule of evil money in Pakistan. That was not a gift. That was the result of the struggle of over 20 years struggle in Pakistan, who succeeded to make a true democracy. Now, this is the reason that the true democracy of Pakistan is widely respected throughout the world, including China, Russia, Saudi, Japan, Iran, UAE, Turkey, Turkmenistan, and throughout the world. This is the reason that the true democracy in Pakistan is the biggest challenge to the corrupt and fake democracy in both India and the West. Therefore, the $1 million advice for Modi government of India will be to make a true democracy for the over 1 billion decent Indian people and fight the hunger and poverty and defeat the widespread corruption in India, just like the Pakistan people did. Otherwise, India will never be equal with Pakistan, and the corrupt democracy of Modi government will never compete the true democracy of Pakistan. Sorry, my time is over, and inshallah I will see you after 1 month. You have a great month. Salam alaikum.
آریانا افغانستان یگانه شبکه تلویزیونی ملی افغانها در خارج از کشور